Welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and this is episode number 186. We have our resident cellular healing specialist, Dr. Dan Pompa, on the line, and today we welcome a very special guest, Dr. Stephen Sinatra. And we have a very fun topic for you guys today. Dr. Sinatra is a cardiologist and expert in heart health, among many other things. So we have some fun topics to dig into around that subject, and it's going to be a fun conversation. So before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Sinatra. Dr. Stephen T. Sinatra is a board-certified cardiologist and an assistant clinical professor of medicine at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine in Farmington, Connecticut. Certified as a bioenergetic psychotherapist and nutrition and anti-aging specialist, Dr. Sinatra integrates psychological, nutraceutical, and electroceutical therapies in the matrix of healing. He's the founder of HeartMDInstitute.com, an informational website dedicated to promoting public awareness of integrative medicine, as well as Vervana.com. Dr. Sinatra is a fellow in the American College of Cardiology and the American College of Nutrition. Dr. Sinatra's latest book, co-authored with Tommy Rosa, is Health Revelations from Heaven and Earth. Welcome to Cellular Healing TV, Dr. Sinatra. We're so excited to have you on. Oh,
thanks, Meredith. It's good to be here.
Listen, I just couldn't wait for this interview because, first of all, I'm going to probably just call him Sinatra because, Meredith, you know my love for Frank Sinatra, and Sinatra has been a mantra in my house for years. And there is a relationship there, by the way. But anyway, so just the word Sinatra, I don't even know if I can say anything before or after it, But anyways, listen, I'll call you Steve right now. But listen, I fell in love with you. We had dinner. We were at a seminar, and I fell in love with you and Jen, your wife. And, no doubt we had a lot in common, including the food we love, including the topics we discussed. But, I call you lovingly, I call you the cardiologist to the stars. I remember years ago, gosh, I think, I don't know, it was one of the major networks, NBC, Fox or something. They had you on, talking about cardiology. I think back then it was cholesterol, which should be one of our topics, some of the myths about cholesterol. But you recently did a cooking Facebook Live with Suzanne Summers that I thought it was amazing, man. That shrimp pasta, I tried to duplicate it already. So I don't think I pulled it off. Yeah, matter of fact, let's start right there. Where can people find that? Give your website, because you got to watch this, folks. It's good stuff. The guy can cook too.
Well, if people want to see that video like this with Suzanne Summers, they can go to HeartMDInstitute.com. It's on that website. Suzanne has another website as well, Suzanne Summers' website. And that was kind of fun because, Suzanne and I are both 70. And in one of my lectures on high vibrational living, I always say that 70 is the new 50, Suzanne and I are born within 24 hours of one another. And think about that, Dan. Do you know anybody in your entire lifetime that's born within one day of you?
Yeah.
So, we have the same astrological chart. And it's amazing. My two sisters look almost like her. I mean, it's kind of scary, And I sent her a picture of my two sisters, and it's kind of cool, but time cooking in our kitchen that day. I mean, and we cooked a lot of healthy food, and that shrimp marinara is really awesome because, one of the hottest nutrients today is astaxanthin. I mean, when I lectured in Japan about 10 years ago, I got introduced to astaxanthin, and I said, oh my gosh, this is one carotenoid that really glitters. I mean, really glitters. It puts beta carotene and lycopene, good carotenoids, but it puts them to shame compared to what astaxanthin does. So, that's why I cooked the tomato sauce with the shrimp, because shrimp contains the astaxanthin. Also, this whole thing about nitric oxide is really booming. And if you look at some of these nitric oxide containing foods, shrimp's one of them because of the arginine combination. And, so are like migratory salmon, with the arginine, nitric oxide combination and the CoQ10. So there's lots of good stuff that really occurs with, these nutritional ingredients.
Yeah, unlike so much seafood, even obviously shellfish, shrimp is really low in mercury and other contaminants too. So, however, I don't like shrimp from Asia. What about you? What do you like?
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I worry about preservatives in shrimp, like the formaldehydes and stuff like that. So, if I'm going to order shrimp in a restaurant, my first question is where do you get your shrimp from? You know, if it comes from the Gulf of Mexico, you know, despite the fact that they had that oil spill, I mean, that was cleaned up. I mean, it's a huge body of water. But I got to tell you, wild shrimp is the way to go.
Absolutely. Let me tell you about the Gulf of Mexico. Here's a funny little truth, right? So, of course, you know, the Gulf thing was horrible and everyone worried. Something amazing happened, actually. And this is how the balance of our ecosystems are amazing. So what happens is that in the Gulf, you know, in the ocean, you have oil that constantly comes up, a certain amount, right? And there's microorganisms that actually have learned to feed on the oil. So what happened in the oil spill, these microorganisms went crazy. So the shrimp in the seafood population went crazy. So right now, they're saying the Gulf is as clean as it's ever been, and it's because of the dang oil spill, because these microorganisms fed this, so it fed the dang ecosystem. So go figure on that, right?
It's like injecting a gazillion pounds of yogurt into the Gulf of Mexico.
That's what happened, man. Exactly, right? So, you know, I mean, oil's natural, right? They spilled it back in and the dang microorganisms ate it.
What a reframe.
Yeah,
right. Thanks for teaching me that. That's a really great reframe. That's really good.
It is a total reframe. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you know, that's the thing I love about you is because, you know, you've obviously, I mean, you've done, I think you were the head of surgery, right? At one point, what hospital?
No, I was chief of cardiology at my institution for 8 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, you get locked into a certain mindset and, you know, lecturing with you and hearing you talk, I'm thinking, my gosh, how did he come from that to this? How did that happen?
Oh gosh, you know, I think my training in psychotherapy really opened up my mind when I was, let's say a fellow in cardiology. I was in my 5th year of training. I entered a Gestalt psychotherapy program right in Hartford, Connecticut. And I was studying with certified Gestalt therapists who trained under Fritz Perls, you know, out in California.
What is Gestalt therapy? It sounds
Gestalt therapy is like living in the here now, so to speak. And, you know, looking at what is instead of what your mind, you know, how your mind fragments it or distorts it or whatever it is. So Fritz Perls was very popular in the 60s in California, and I worked with some of his disciples. And the incredible thing is I did 2 years of Gestalt psychotherapy, and I realized how inadequately I was prepared as a physician because the mind-body is really essential in any illness. I mean, look, have you ever had the flu and you felt terrible? And basically, people have gotten depressed after illnesses. So the mind-body is very, very important. So, you know, following of my 5 years of training in medicine and 2 years of Gestalt, one of the reading lists on that bibliography for a Gestalt therapist was Bioenergetics by Alexander Lowen. And I got to tell you, when I read this book, I said, wow, this is a guy I got to meet. So I ended up going to a workshop in New York City. There was only 5 Americans in the workshop. They were mostly from South America, Australia, and Europe. And ever since I met Lowen, then I did a 10-year psychotherapy training program in bioenergetic psychotherapy. So I emerged as a psychotherapist in addition to being a board-certified cardiologist. And to my knowledge, I think I'm the only certified bioenergetic therapist and certified cardiologist that I know of in the world. I mean, I don't think anybody else has done that.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting because I think you'll share more, you know, just how that really applies. You know, it's, you know, it sure does. And it's amazing you're the only one, really, because when you start to understand bioenergetics and you start to understand our connection or deconnection with the earth, you say, my gosh, the heart runs on electricity, for darn goodness sakes, right? It's like,
absolutely.
I mean, so it's actually remarkable. You know, how many books do you have, man? That might be your next book.
Well, actually, the next book, I just gave a lecture in Montreal last week, and I think I gave it out in SOPMed. I gave a third of it. You know, high vibrational living.
Yes.
You know, the strategic plan for optimum health. That's going to be my next book, basically, because I gave the full lecture in Montreal. It was an hour and a half, and I was shocked over the amount of accolades I got for it. I mean, I was very, very humble. I mean, I was touched. But these people came up to me and they said, oh, geez, that was the best lecture I ever heard. I didn't realize this information and blah, blah, blah. So that lecture, Dan, is sort of my 40-plus years of being a cardiologist.
Yeah.
I start the lecture out showing, you know, our descent to the moon. It was back in 1969. Think about what you were doing back in 1969.
Let's see. I was four.
Maybe
I was
you weren't
4
even
years
born
old.
then. I don't know. You look like a young guy.
I was 4 years old. I was 4 years old in 1969. So I was sorry. I don't know. I was laying somewhere doing nothing. I was eating or sucking something. Who knows? Anyways,
I was 22, right? I was 22, and we put a man on the moon, and I saw that moon shot with Neil Armstrong. And one of the slides is basically that moon shot. And I have to tell you, my 40 plus years of medicine after that, I mean, some of the things in medicine that we did 40 years ago was barbaric. I mean, can you imagine that I scrubbed that surgery when we had people with ulcers, ulcers. We called it from stress or whatever, but we used to cut ulcers out. We used to, cut the vagus nerve, do a Billroth 1 or a Billroth 2 procedure. This is like 40 years ago. And then 20 years ago, we realized that ulcers are caused by a parasite, H. pylori. So some of the things we did in medicine decades ago, I mean, in my mind now, we're kind of barbaric.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Steve, what things we're doing right now, we're going to look back 20 years from now and go, oh my God, can you believe we had, all these people on statins? We thought cholesterol was killing people, right? I mean, there's a small group that's seeing that vision is not true. You being one of them, but come on, think about that,
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. In fact, the way we treat illness is really, it's a pharmaceutical agenda, basically. We have a symptom, we treat the symptom with a drug. But I'll tell you, Dan, the Biogenome Project came out in 1993, and 3 guys won a Nobel Prize on it. So now it's about 20 years. But look at all this genetic testing we can do. We can do a buccal smear and find out our genetic weaknesses. And now the doctors of the future are going to say, hey, wait a minute. Instead of going through this differential diagnosis, ordering all these lab tests, doing this, and this, we're just going to go to your genetic profile, find out where you need help, and we're going to put a finger in the dike and treat that genetic defect. That's the future of medicine. I mean, I really believe that the newer doctors coming out now are going to get right to the table. Forget about a lot of this pharmaceutical agenda, unless if the pharmaceutical agenda demonstrates that you need a drug to circumnavigate that situation of being dealt a bad set of genes, for example.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for everything, and I think that so many people are just lured into this statin thing, and they're thrown on statins regardless if their cholesterol is over 200. Give me your opinion on that, and then after that, I want you to lead into, because when I watched you lecture at that conference, I think it was 10, maybe it was 5. You gave like these 10 things are what we need today to avoid a heart attack. And by the way, I mean, statistics for heart attacks. I mean, this is still one of the top killers in America.
Oh, no, it is a top killer. You're absolutely right. Yeah. You know what worries me? It's not men anymore. Now it's women. Women are getting heart disease more than men. The graphs have crossed. And, geez, in my training, the youngest woman I had with a heart attack was 18.
All the people on statins, all these people on statins, the statistics aren't changing. So let's start with your opinion of this statin.
Yeah. I mean, basically, statins do some good things, and they do some very, very bad things. It's my belief that the good things statins do is that they're powerful antioxidants. And basically, statins thin the blood. It's almost like grounding. When you put your bare feet on the ground on the earth, you're taking that Schumann energy, it thins the blood. And thin blood is really the essence of good cardiovascular optimum health. Once you have red ketchup blood, as opposed to your blood being like red wine, the more stasis in your blood, the more inflammation in your blood, you can get a stroke up here or a heart attack here. So it behooves us to keep our blood thin. So one thing that statins do bring to the table is that they do create blood thinning. It was shown, in the West of Scotland study about 25 years ago. However,
by the way, those two things explain the small improvement that we see, but it's small, but the risks, I don't know.
But the risk, especially in women and the elderly, is huge. Now, do I give women with high cholesterols or heart attacks statins? No, maybe 1 or 2% of women. Will I give a male under the age of 75 a statin with proven coronary artery disease, had a heart attack, he's had stents, he's had bypass, Dan, I will. In other words, the data shows that men young men, again, and I think I'm 75 is young, and a statin, right? That statin, because of its pleiotropic effects, not because of its cholesterol lowering effect, but I'm talking about the blood thinning, the antioxidant activity, the antifungal activity, all those aspects that statins do. As long as you give that same person coenzyme Q10 and other, targeted nutritional supplements, and you fortify that person, because remember, statins are incredible cholesterol killers, but they also knock out the pathway for coenzyme Q10.
Right.
Because coenzyme Q10 shares the same biochemical pathway. So that's why, being a CoQ10 pioneer and an expert, and I've written about 40 or 50 papers on CoQ10. I've published books on CoQ10. I've done research on multiple animal models, including the human model on CoQ10. I really feel comfortable with CoQ10. But again, if you do take a statin, you must take CoQ10 as a chaser at the same time.
Why didn't they put it in? Because before the first drug was launched, they knew that this depleted CoQ10 and could even lead to congestive heart failure. Why didn't they put it in when they first made the first statin?
Well, that's an excellent question, because Merck Pharmaceuticals had the patent on ubiquinone and CoQ10, and I believe it expired in 1999, and I think there was the second one in the year 2000. So they had the patent. They should have used it, and because as a pioneer and as sort of an antagonist to this situation, it would have been the right thing to do. But when the drug companies are making millions and millions of dollars, why change anything? But then the negative research started to come out on the statins when Dr. Delorgeril in France wrote this paper about some of the, quote, fraudulent or some of the slippery studies that were done on statins. And it came out after the Vioxx disaster in the year 2005. Remember Vioxx, when people were getting sudden death from this analgesic, and Merck was put under a microscope by the FDA because basically there was so many complications with Vioxx that basically now the statin studies were put under the microscope. Mm-hmm. And since 2005, which is 12 years ago, there's been very, very few positive studies on statins, as opposed to the research before 2005, right, when this whole FDA finally did its job and really put the pharmaceutical companies under close scrutiny.
Yeah, I mean, how do you do it? I mean, I've read so many studies with the statins, obviously, and dementia, and we know that cholesterol is so needed in the brain, and then diabetes as well. Cholesterol is needed in the cell membranes and the receptors. What's your feeling on that?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, some of the papers on statins that was published in the Archives of Neurology showed that, some people can get Alzheimer's disease, 15 years before its onset if they use the statin. Mm-hmm. And then there were other papers that came out that showed that statins, quote, protected you from Alzheimer's disease.
I remember that.
Dan, it's the medical literature,
exactly.
When I was a young doctor, we used to wave papers around and say, well, I got 5 papers to support this. Yeah. And somebody else across the room would wave up 5 papers against your argument, So one thing about the medical literature, there's always to and fro, In other words, it always forces for you and against you. So what every doctor needs to be is their own scientist. In other words, you got to read the stuff yourself. You have to look at these crazy words like, basically, what the statistics are, because you can do mental gymnastics with statistics and make a small, insignificant piece look like a big piece in the paper.
That's why I study
that, relative and all that stuff, And
it's deceiving too, because with more studies coming out on not the total cholesterol that's even matters, it's the particles and the size of the particles, right?
Correct.
So and then it's okay. So what role do statins play there? I think you're right. I think some of the positive is there is that anti-inflammatory effect that we see, but when you look at the studies on statins and lowering the particles and the small particles, it's not very good. And there's so many natural things you could take without the risk. Let's talk about some of those.
Yeah, absolutely. What you're raising a question on is LP little a. It's a very small cholesterol particle, has a disulfide bridge. It's very, very inflammatory, and it's thrombotic at the same time. In other words, not only does it give you inflammation in your blood vessels, but also clots the blood in your blood vessels. And the only thing that really helps, there's no drugs that help it, Dan.
No, I know.
The only thing that I know that helps Lp(a) are things like omega-3 essential fatty acids, nattokinase, lumbrokinase, that's marketed in Canada under the term Baluki. I've seen studies that show that it intercepts, the toxic effects of Lp(a). But again, they tried drugs on this, and even the statins have been shown to increase Lp(a) in some people. Yeah. So when it comes to very, very small cholesterol particles, I'm a big believer in Lp(a). And remember, some people can eradicate it with just niacin. High dose. The problem with niacin is you get the hot flush and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to suggest the niacin, right? Yeah. So listen, so give us in the lecture, was it 10 things you went through? Like, look, these 10 things, what you felt were like significant for everybody to avoid heart attack. What was it, 10 or was it 12?
Yeah. It's sort of my my pearls or my Sinatra guidelines for a healthy heart. I mean, the first thing that is obvious is a non-inflammatory diet. I mean, and the best non-inflammatory diet, and you'll probably sing to this mantra because you believe this wholeheartedly. I've gone to your lectures, but we need higher protein, we need more healthy fat, and we need less carbohydrate. So, a lot of the American diets, unfortunately, the 60, 70, 80% carbohydrate, all that does is it's pro-inflammatory. It elicits an insulin response. We get a lot of sugars. And remember, insulin is the most pro-inflammatory hormone. It accelerates aging. And if you look at the diabetic population, I mean, why do diabetics die 15 years before their normal counterparts? Well, surges of insulin going up and down, it creates enormous inflammation. So, a non-inflammatory diet. And in that diet, I like all organic, non-GMO. I don't want chemicals, insecticides, pesticides. I don't want heavy metals. I just don't want the environmental toxins. That's why I developed this pasta sauce. My last name is Sinatra, but I got Italian by olive oil too. I should mention this, Dan. Back in the 1990s, when I wrote my first book, Lose to Win, I believed in vitamins and minerals. I used to go to Twin Labs and I used to buy these and I used to take them. And then I realized, I said, wait a minute. Some of these manufacturers had 3 milligrams of copper in their multivitamin. Well, you don't need copper. I mean, not that dose, Some of these vitamins had iron in it, even, that men were taking. This is crazy. And then I realized, I was only probably in my early 40s. I realized that I have to make my own vitamins and minerals. So back in the early 90s, after I wrote a couple of my books, I started to get in the vitamin and mineral industry, and I realized that I had to clean things up. And then it took me another, 25 years to realize we got to do something with food because our foods are contaminated,
Yeah.
And, it's not just eating organic. You need multiple labels on your food, the non-GMOs, the organic, you don't want plastics, you don't want anything in that food. You want a high vibrational food. And it's almost like the Greeks of yesteryear. When the Greeks were running the Olympics 2,000 years ago, one of the best foods that they used was bee pollen. Because bee pollen brought a lot to the table for them. It improved their endurance. And they also believed that it improved their health. So, a couple of thousand years ago, I mean, this is like old history. But I really feel like a healthy diet, a non-inflammatory diet, is really the sine qua non of healing. And that's number one.
Let's just talk about these products right here, because I'm a big believer in olive oil, but there's a big problem with olive oil today. Most of the olive oil being consumed is rancid and almost being put in the same category as vegetable oils, which are extremely oxidative, rancid. And that's happening to olive oil. That's one of the reasons why you created your own. So talk about this. And matter of fact, talk about why olive oil is so darn good.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh my gosh. Hey folks, what Dr. Pompa just did is he did an example of the pre-med study, which was put out by Dr. Gonzalez. Dr. Gonzalez and I spoke at the American College of Nutrition together a few years ago on the merits of olive oil. And he was the lead author of the pre-med study. And the pre-med study basically looked at about almost 8,000 people. And they put these people on, they divided them up, and basically a third of them went on a lot of nuts. Nuts are healthy for you, like the Seventh-day Adventists, for example, eat a lot of nuts. They put a third of the people on extra virgin olive oil, and they did what you just did, 2 tablespoons a day. Oh no, 4 tablespoons a day. You just took 2 tablespoons in that one little, dose. 4 tablespoons a day, which is about, almost 500 calories. And then the control group was on the American Heart Association diet, what the Heart Association recommends.
Death diet.
After 5 years, the olive oil group and the nut group, they were by shades apart, had less stroke, less heart attack, less Alzheimer's, less diabetes, less bypass surgery. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So we looked at this, and I researched this at the same time. I said, what is going on with olive oil? Well, olive oil raises HDL, it lowers, LDL. It makes small particle LDL, like you were talking about, which is very inflammatory. It makes it a little more fluffier so it doesn't get inside the blood vessel. It does all of these great things. But there was a study, and oh boy, I got the chill on this one because the angels are telling me I'm right on. I read this study back about 6 years ago showing that extra virgin olive oil changed pro-inflammatory genes. In other words, if you have pro-inflammatory genes in your body, it makes these pro-inflammatory genes less inflammatory. It lowers the profile. And when you do that, you age better.
Yeah.
I mean, think of this. Why are more 100-year-old people in the Mediterranean basin as opposed to the entire world?
Yeah.
Whether they're living in Libya, Egypt, the island of Crete, Italy, Spain, Israel, even that whole basin, we see more 100-year-old people, and it's my belief it's because they're eating extra virgin olive oil. However, you said something very, very important. Over the last 5 years, the olive oil has been contaminated by canola oil.
Yeah.
And that's a problem with some of the European oils. Not all of them, but a good percentage of them have almost 25% canola oil in there. And the label doesn't disclose that. The label says, as long as you're 75% extra virgin, you can be 100% extra virgin. However, the California Growers Council stipulates it's got to be 100% extra virgin. And that's why I went to California, went to the olive fields, picked my own olives. I was there for the whole day. We did the crush. We did everything. And, that's why I went with California. Look, I would have loved to have an Italian olive oil. My last name's Sinatra. But I had to go with California extra virgin.
No, man, when you take this, you feel that grassy right there, man.
It's peppery. That's like a period.
Yeah, it is.
It makes you cough.
Polyphenols, baby.
Oh, that's right. Olive oil is loaded with, hydroxytyrosol, polyphenols, squalene. It has all these ingredients that delay the onset of aging, And by the way, I put so much extra olive oil in this sauce. In this sauce, I added more garlic, more olive oil, more parsley. I didn't add sugar. I used organic carrots instead. I mean, I just wanted to make this sauce so bulletproof because, look, I have a last name, Sinatra. And unfortunately, I eat pasta 2 or 3 times a week. But I eat the higher protein. I sent you a higher protein pasta, didn't I?
You did. I loved it.
15 grams of protein per serving. For a protein addict like yourself, you probably really resonated with that. I mean, that's like having 2.5 to 3 ounces of sirloin steak. Instead of eating animal, you're eating a nice vegetarian dish.
Right here, let me, you actually started your own, like you did some other products, food line that are non-GMO. And so tell them where they can pick up this olive oil and that sauce, which I'm going to tell about because that sauce is outstanding. It reminded me of my mother's, and what you and I talked about the sauce, but we were talking about the benefits, right, of a good sauce, right? But you said, yeah, but my concern, I'm having it tested because even though it's in a glass bottle, what you learned was when they ship in the tomatoes, it can be in containers that are plastic or have plastic around them. And then they're put in glass, but they're high in BPA. You had it tested. So
exactly. You're raising a good point. The tomatoes are non-GMO tomatoes. They come from Italy. However, they come in cans. And when I went to the factory where they were making the sauce, I looked inside the can and I was looking for the lining. And, maybe I didn't give it enough scrutiny. But when I left, I said, gee whiz, if that has that BPA lining, there could be BPA in the tomato sauce. So I had it tested, and thank God I came out BPA free. You know, I mean, right now, I mean, I went to the health food show in New York a few weeks ago, and even the tuna fish cans, you can buy tuna fish now that's BPA free, mercury free. In other words, they're really testing these, and I love it. I think, you know, with the health millennials coming up and foods of the future, I think people are going to demand that, you know, they want high quality, high vibrational food. We don't want food laced with chemicals. It's bad enough right now with the GMO situation. But the more we get away from this, and as a physician, and you as a PhD, I mean, you know, we're both coming together to really, you know, get our people to really eat more healthy, because Hippocrates was right. You are what you eat. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, so that's my first pillar of healing.
I mean, that's the thing, man. People are buying tomato in glass because they don't want it in cans because of the BPA. But meanwhile, what they don't know is the tomatoes were shipped in plastic and then put in there after it's, you know, and then it has BPA.
Or in aluminum cans that was online, yes.
Yeah, you know, no doubt. In fact, you tested it, like, you know, just for that reason, I want to buy the sauce. Tell people how to get this stuff, man. You definitely want this olive oil and the sauce. Love them both. And the pasta. How do they get it?
Oh yeah, the pasta. Actually, I'm working on 3 pastas. I'm working on a chickpea pasta and a red lentil pasta. I like the red lentil pasta the best because, again, they could have minute traces of gluten in it because some of the pastas are made in factories that contain, you know, wheat. But remember, the wheat from Italy is a much better wheat than the wheat from the United States. There's no doubt about that. But having said that, I mean, I like pastas, whether it's chickpea or whether it's peas, you know, PEAs, or the red lentil, because they have higher protein. Remember this, you know, for our reviewers, the higher protein you take in, the less insulin response. In other words, protein and fats, they require a minimal, if no insulin response at all. So if you mix your foods with higher proteins and higher healthy fats, you won't get the insulin response, and that's what protects you from cardiovascular disease. Remember, insulin is the most pro-inflammatory hormone. So if we cut back on insulin, better. And that's why I feel with higher protein, and like you, I'm sort of a modified vegetarian. I you know, don't eat a lot of meat, but basically, if you can get your protein from vegetarian sources, I'm all in on that.
Well, when I eat meat, it's clean, you know, and
right. Organic meat, organic mice.
For me, it has to be grass-fed. I mean, I eat a lot of, you know, vegetables in my diet, but I'm more higher fat, you know, and I would say, you know, moderate in that department, you know, the meat of the protein department, but really high fat, quality fats, you know, in low carb. And I vary my diet. I go different times of the year. Okay, you still haven't answered the question. Where do you get the stuff?
Sure. Yeah. It's Vervana, VRVANA.com. That's our website. I've been building this website for 5 years. At first, it was HeartMDInstitute.com, which was pure information. We have hundreds and hundreds of pages out there. You know, when I came out with my negative comments on cell phones 10 years ago, people were calling me a quack, you know. Now in the news, it's big news now that cell phones, well, male testosterone's going down, and now sterility in males is a big problem. Well, guess what? We've known this over the last 10 years, but now it's coming out. I mean, if a typical male, you know, takes a cell phone and he puts it in his pocket, you know, right here, I mean, that's only a few inches away from his testicles. And cell phones emit, you know, a radiation continuously. So basically, I really worry about male infertility right now. You know, when I was in medical school, it wasn't the males, it was the females. But now it's the males. It's 50% of males.
My son's sitting at his computer all day, right? He works on websites, etc. And he was getting testicular pain. So I went out where he lives and I brought my device to measure. I don't have it right now to show because I gave it to him to retest. And I found, I mean, the levels coming out from his desk, right where his testicles are, were 100 times, maybe 200 times what would be considered safe because it was pulsing, right? And
oh my God, pulsing is the worst. It's the worst.
It is. It is the worst. So, you know, no wonder, you know, he's getting testicular pain. You know, the next step was cancer. So I gave him a website. I said, this stuff can easily be shielded for pennies, literally pennies.
Right, right. Or you know, or have him ground at the same time. He's on a computer. You can put a grounding pad on his feet.
Yeah,
I mean, when I'm at a computer, I always have bare feet on a grounding pad. I don't have it right now because I'm in my wife's office. But like, you know, whenever I'm on a computer doing my work, I'm grounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's grounding. He's doing it all. So.
And that's one of my other pillars of healing. So we handle grounding right now. You know, if you want me to go on exercise, and you're an exercise enthusiast, you know that.
Yep.
You know, I'm a big proponent of exercise, and you know, it brings an enormous amount to the table. Mind-body interactions. I mean, I'm a big believer in Tai Chi, big believer in yoga. I teach at the Yoga Institute in Serenanda every year. I just feel when you bring mind-body medicine to the table, it really supports heart rate variability. Whenever you do that, you're really healing. You're really healing the body. I'm a big proponent of detoxification. One of the things that you know, conductors do, and I don't know if I talked about this at the conference, but if you look at the oldest living, let's say, profession in the world, classical musicians that are conductors, they have the longest longevity in a sense that if you look at centenarians or individuals who lived over 100 years old or 90 years old, novagenarians, by far, it's the conductors that lead the pack. And why is that? Well, you can say, you know, they're into the music and blah, 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 blah. No, what they're doing is when they're doing arm motion like this, they're cleansing the thoracic duct. They're moving lymph in their thoracic duct, and it gets distributed and then eventually to the gut, and it gets expelled out of the body. But when you're doing this, you're detoxing. Now, a lot of Eastern monks, for example, will do this exercise where they'll swing their arms in front of their face and back like this. I don't know if you can see this, but basically if they do that 200 times a day, you're also moving lymph through the thoracic ducts. And whenever you're moving lymph in the body and you're getting those toxins out, well, you know, you're helping the body age more gracefully. So that's why detoxification is vitally important, you know, in any form of anti-aging medicine.
Yeah, no, that's obviously, you know, how I got my life back and what we preach and teach here, you know, keeping those pathways open. So let's go back to the grounding, because we kind of went right over that. When we were at the conference, you know, you said, hey, you loved my shoes. And I was like, yeah, but they were mostly rubber, right? There was a little leather around the outside, but you know,
you mean your shoes?
Leather. Yeah. I had a nice pair of shoes, but they were mostly rubber. You know, and I said, yeah, my other ones are all leather, right? But right there.
These are my shoes. You hear that leather?
Yeah. So you ground with
leather. I wear leather all the time.
Explain that. Explain why that affects your body, your brain, your heart, obviously, but explain why leather, not rubber.
Yeah. Actually, Dan, when I did the research on grounding, and we actually did, you know, two major cardiovascular pieces of research. One was how it supports heart rate variability. And whenever you do that, oh my God, you can prevent sudden death, you can live longer. I mean, that's incredible stuff. But having said that,
explain what that is, because some of our viewers know what that is, some don't. Heart rate variability.
Heart rate variability is literally the heart telling the brain what to do. In other words, a lot of people think the brain is king in the body. It's not. You know, because the vagus nerve and the heart are connected, there's a connection between our heart and our brain. But basically, when you support heart rate variability, when you, let's say, when you put your bare feet on the earth, and what you're doing is, you know, a lot of us are under stress. So we have what we call a stressed out sympathetic nervous system, what we call that sympathetic overdrive. We're putting out adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol. We're putting out these toxic hormones because everybody's under stress. I mean, look what happened in Europe yesterday. I mean, that affects everybody. You know, just thinking about it can affect it. So it triggers our hormones, and basically what heart rate variability does, when you bring measures to get the heart rate variability back into sync by lowering the sympathetic drive or raising the parasympathetic so it's equal, well, that's really healing. So that's one of the things that grounding does. It has a favorable impact on heart rate variability. So, but the other thing is, and I was mortified with my colleagues because I sent this article, this research, to 8 journals in the world, but they were all cardiovascular journals because I'm a heart specialist. When we realized that earthing, by putting your bare feet on the ground, thins the blood, makes the blood like red wine, as opposed to red ketchup. Oh my God. I said to me, this is the greatest discovery I've ever made in my lifetime. And, you know, I spoke to Ali Johansson in Sweden about this. He was laughing and laughing, and he's saying, you'll never get that published. You'll be dead and buried. You know, they might give you the Nobel Prize 40 years from now, but right now, forget about it. People aren't going to believe it. But he agreed with me. He thought it was incredible because the problem with heart disease and stroke is that we get hypercoagulable blood. Our blood is like red ketchup and it sticks. If you can make your blood thin, that's what you want to do. The problem with cell phones and cordless phones and computers is they make the blood thick. It makes it hypercoagulable. So that's why, you know, it's really important to get back to nature. It's so important. And to walk barefoot on the beach or bare feet on concrete, not on asphalt. You know, bare feet in the park is good, you know. I mean, look, you don't want to walk bare feet where there's, you know, bushes this high. You don't want to get ticks, for example. We have to worry about Lyme disease and all other kind of stuff. But basically, the beach and short grass and concrete and sand and, you know, brick is good, like I mentioned. And even in your house, like you live in Utah, if you have a concrete floor, put your bare feet on the floor. Mm-hmm. Or if you have a fireplace in your house, you can sit on a hearth and put your hands on the brick because it's grounded. Even your faucets in the house, you know, the steel. I remember my son, when he was feeling weak, he would always grab a faucet and hold on to the faucet because that would recharge his body, because he was a big believer in grounding, and he always thought it was one of the best things that got his life back for him.
So wearing leather it grounds you, so you can have shoes on as long as they're made of a natural natural substance, as opposed to rubber, well, which is natural, but rubber will block the grounding.
Right. Even when Clint Ober shot his documentary and he went inside an Indian tent in Montana, the woman said to him, "Take your shoes off. They'll make you sick." He had no idea what she was talking about. But after he spent 15 years of his life on grounding, he realizes what she meant. I mean, the American Indian, they walked on leather. So they were always grounded to Mother Earth. And in the teepee, they walked right on, you know, the bare surface. So it's, you know, there's a lot to earthing and grounding. And you know, that's one of my 7 pillars of healing, you know. And the only other pillar I didn't mention that we're both into is vitamin and mineral supplementation. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, our toxic diet, the herbicides, the insecticides, the GMOs, these are horrific oxidants, and they cause, you know, accelerated aging, and they cause oxidative stress. So you really need antioxidants to the table. And, you know, it's like magnesium. Magnesium to me is one of the most important, you know, antioxidants. But the problem is a lot of the vegetables and the fruits we eat, they're grown in magnesium deficient soils. Yeah. So even that one nutrient, that's why magnesium is part of my awesome foursome. I love coenzyme Q10, and I like magnesium and ribose and carnitine, because they all support the natural endogenous production of ATP, which is really our chi energy. It's our energy of life. So I'm a big believer in targeted nutritional supplements, you know, bringing them to the table. I love the combination of resveratrol and turmeric. I think that's a knockout punch for the brain. I think that will help prevent Alzheimer's or pre-senile dementia, you know, a lot of 70 and 80-year-olds. So if you take omega-3, turmeric, resveratrol, and coenzyme Q10, and you put them together, that's a great remedy for brain health. And right now, I'm looking at pure tocotrienols as well, delta tocotrienol and gamma tocotrienol. I met with Dr. Barry Tan a few weeks ago. He lives in New England with me, and I retoured his factory, and I got to tell you, it was absolutely stunning, you know, beautiful. And so pure tocotrienols, I think, have a place in overall optimum health as well. But remember, you can't take tocotrienols at the same time that you take tocopherols. You got to spread them out a little bit, because they can antagonize one another, even though they're both vitamin E's. I mean, there's 4 tocopherols and there's 4 tocotrienols, but you got to separate them a little bit. And if you do, you'll get maximum protection. You can take them together, but you don't get the protection you get when they're separated. They do a better job.
So what about some other things to thin the blood? You've been talking about how important it is to have the thin blood. Enzymes do that, systemic enzymes. What else?
Oh, yeah, like whenever I eat something, I always take digestive enzymes. You know, I like enzymes. I was a big believer in Wob enzyme. Remember years ago, the German athletes that won the Olympics? You know, there's a big group of them. I still take a variety of Wob enzyme, but I take nattokinase and lumbrokinase. I interchange them. So, you know, I'm a big believer in digestive enzymes. Look, even people who take a baby aspirin a day. I mean, baby aspirin thins the blood. There's no doubt about it. The only problem with higher dose aspirin, and it worries me, like, you know, like let's say Bayer aspirin, right? You take 2 Bayer aspirin for a headache. You know, what worries me about aspirin is that people get GI upset from it, and there's about 19,000 people a year who get, you know, bleeding ulcers from aspirin and could die from aspirin. So, you know, aspirin is it's like a blessing and a curse at the same time. We need it, especially in bypass population and people who have had stents and stuff like that. But again, when it comes to aspirin, it will thin the blood. I like lower dose aspirin. I love garlic. I mean, garlic was like Russian penicillin. I mean, garlic thins the blood, you know. You know, so there's lots of nutrients you can take that, you know, can have a blood thinning effect. Omega-3s will thin the blood, you know, salmon oil, fish oil. I like calamari oil because squid live in the ocean, small squid, only 450 days. So I'm a big believer in anything that, you know, helps to thin the blood, because when you do that, and grounding does it. So if you do, you know, supplements, if you eat healthy foods, at the same time do grounding, you want to have thin blood. Thin blood is really, to me, the essence of healing.
Yeah, I had said, there was a gentleman at one of the seminars, and he had said, yeah, I'm getting these symptoms. I said, man, you know, to me, it sounded like he was having a stroke. I said, you need to go get checked immediately. On your way, please stop and get some baby aspirin, you know, on the way to the hospital, because that actually can make the difference. You know, but, you know,
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Dan. You know, I mean, you're talking like a doctor, an MD. I love it. If people think they're having a heart attack or a stroke, you know, they can't form a word, and you know, it comes on all of a sudden gradually, or they lose function of an extremity, or they're having massive substernal crushing chest pain, call an ambulance. There's no doubt about it. And if you can chew on an aspirin or 2, just do it, you know?
No,
that can be life-saving.
Yeah, statistically, it's huge what it can do immediately. I mean, there's a point. People that stay on aspirin a long time, and again, too high dose, the blood gets too thin, and then they're bruising, etc. It weakens the capillary wall. You know, that's why I do prefer the natural things. But in the emergency, the aspirin works right away, you know, honestly. Meredith, I hogged Sinatra, man. I just absolutely hogged him. You're dying to ask some questions, so sorry.
Oh gosh, well, oh my gosh. I mean, I've been taking notes, and this has been an amazing conversation. But I was, you know, when I was reading through your bio, Dr. Sinatra, it said that you integrate nutraceutical and electroceutical therapies as well. So could you talk a little bit about how you use those and what they are?
I think the grounding.
Yeah, I mean, the nutraceutical therapy is basically, like, I'm a big believer in vitamin and mineral therapy. I think everybody should be on a standard multivitamin. You know, with lower dose copper, you know, good B vitamins in them, vitamin C, some vitamin E, a little bit of carotenoids, and lots of minerals. I mean, we are so mineral deficient as a population. That's why I like C minerals, or any minerals for that matter, because we just need it. The other thing, too, is I'm a big believer in vitamin K2, metaquinone.
Me too.
About 12 years ago, when I read the research from the Netherlands researchers, they happened to be at Yale New Haven. And I called them up, Leon Schurgers and Dr. C's Vermeer. I can't remember. I remember both their names. I can't believe it. And like, when I called them up, I said, I'd like to have dinner with you. I read your research. And they were really sweet guys. They said, you know, an American cardiologist calling us. So we had dinner. It was one of the most provocative, interesting dinners I ever had in my life. But ever since I met them, and we went over to the Rotterdam study, statistics and stuff like that, I became a big believer in MK7. So I take MK7 every day. And remember this, Dan, MK7, and Meredith, especially you're a woman, MK7 takes calcium out of our blood vessels where it doesn't belong, and it puts it back into your bones where it does belong. So for women suffering from osteoporosis, or even men, for example, who get it later on in life, I take MK7 every day. I take omega-3s every day. I take coenzyme Q10 every day. I take a little carnitine, B vitamins, like I said, with the multivitamins. I take nattokinase and lumbrokinase. I switch them off. I take a red kelp seaweed with astaxanthin because of my experience in Japan when I went there and I visited there and I saw how important astaxanthin is. Right now, I'm working on a product that contains CoQ10 and the tocotrienols together, because tocotrienols, the most recent research, it brings an enormous amount to the table, especially for the brain and our neurons. There's so many antioxidants that you can bring to the table. I mean, my grandson was at my house yesterday. He opened up my cabinet. He goes, "Grandpa, you take all those pills?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "How many do you take a day?" I go, "About 100. I mean, I have my bottles out there, and I'm sure you do the same thing. I mean, if you've been a doctor as long as I have, and you've written enough books, you get religion, right? and the religion is I'm a big believer in antioxidants. Now, Meredith brought up the electroceuticals. Well, the electroceuticals is the ground energy. In other words, that's Mother Earth energy. And for our viewers that don't understand it, when you put your bare feet on the ground, there's a meridian that runs up the body from the feet. We call it the K1. I mean, you're an acupuncture guy. You know this stuff. But the K1, if I can get my foot up here, can you see that? It's right here below the big toe. And that's a pressure point. And when you walk barefoot on the ground, that K1 activates. It goes all the way up to the back of the spine, around into the brain. And that K1 point, if you're absorbing electrons from Mother Earth, from, like I said, sand, grass, walking in the ocean, you know, all that stuff, you're literally getting gazillions of antioxidants in the body. And when you do that, it's like taking handfuls of antioxidants. So when you take electroceuticals, grounding, now, is the foreign word sort of an electroceutical? Yeah, in a way, because you're sweating. You know what I mean? Whenever you sweat, sweating is awesome for the body. You know, we're both, you know, college athletes. We know how important it is to sweat. And the thing is, you get mercury out, you get insecticides. People don't realize that insecticides and pesticides, they're laid in that subcutaneous layer of our fat. So when you are in a foreign infrared sauna and you're sweating, you're getting mercury out, you're getting chemicals out, you're getting insecticides out. So I'm a big believer in the nutraceutical / electroceutical situation, whether it's detox, grounding, or whatever it is. I just believe that it's in my pillars of optimum health. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. I know our viewers and listeners learned a ton, Doc. Man, great stuff, Steve. I just really appreciate you. I really do. And buy his products, folks, because you know they are absolutely phenomenal. People ask me all the time, where can I get a good olive oil and a good sauce? Well, you have more than that there, but these are great. So thanks for your
thanks so much, Dan. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, your contribution over the years, you know, you've saved and changed a lot of lives. That's for sure.
By the way, Meredith is a superb associate. I tell you, man, she made this a sleigh ride for everybody. So Meredith, thank you. You were great.
Oh, thank you. And this has been such an informative episode. And Dr. Sinatra, we like to end shows by asking our guest experts for their 3 key takeaways for our viewers for their best cellular health. So what would you say to that question?
Oh, boy. Okay. Are you ready for this? All right. The first thing is whatever emotion you experience it. In other words, don't deny it. If you feel you have sadness, don't suppress it, cry it out. Crying is the healthiest thing you can bring to the heart, because whenever you cry, you're not only discharging toxins, you know, out of the eyes and tears and stuff like that, but the extra breathing from sobbing is absolutely essential. I learned this as a bioenergetic psychotherapist. And sadness and internalized anger are the Achilles heel for the cardiovascular system. So you must get rid of yourself of these locked in emotions. Have your anger out. Don't hit anybody. Don't go into rage. Those are toxic emotions. But you know, if you want to have anger, that's fine. Have your sadness. You know, that's number 1. Number 2, walk grounded. Absolutely. You know, sleep grounded, walk grounded. Take Mother Earth energy in. Take it in. Number 3, eat healthy. That includes taking targeted nutritional supplements, organic foods as much as you can, non-GMO foods. In other words, Bring targeted nutritional supplements and healthy eating to the table. Try to keep your weight down. Discharge yourself of emotional toxicity. And I think you put 20 years onto your life. So those are my top 3.
Good advice.
Awesome. Love it. Body, mind, and soul. Well, thank you so much, Dr.
Body,
Sinatra.
mind, and soul. That's right.
Yep. Amen. Thanks for bringing your wisdom. Amazing episode. Thank you, Dr. Pompa, as always. And thank you to you who are listening and watching. We wouldn't be here without you. So grateful for all of you for this amazing interview. And thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.